Hey everyone, welcome to Devirai Technologies. In this video, we are going to getting started with the Azure AI Services. I'll be following Microsoft Learn tutorial and I'll be going step by step, also explaining few other things. So let's get started. Let me quickly show you from where did I get this particular tutorial. These are all the exercises that we will be covering. In this video, we'll be covering get started with Azure AI Services. And I got this particular exercise from the second module of AI-102 certification. So let me open up this one. So we have this learning path, designing and implementing a Microsoft AI solution, that is AI-102 certification, and it has various courses in it, and each courses contains multiple modules. So currently I'm on the get started with Azure AI Services. Inside this one, I'm on the second module, that is create and consume AI services. Inside that, we have an exercise, use Azure AI Services. If you do not have a environment where you can perform this exercise, Microsoft provides you a virtual machine where you can go step by step by following the instruction. You just need to click on start tab, so it will launch a window, a new virtual machine, a new computer where you can perform this exercise. So I'll be performing it on my machine and not on the virtual machine. The reason being, my computer already has all the required tools and softwares to complete this exercise. This link I got it from here, exercise instruction here. If you would like to follow these instructions on your computer, you can follow the exercise here. Alright, so this is the page. So first of all, they're asking us to clone the repository in Microsoft Visual Studio Code. Let's do that. Clone a Git repository. This is the URL and clone from URL. I'm not sure if you can see where I'm putting this URL. It is on the top of the search screen. It might not be visible to you, but yeah. Then it is asking me to choose a location where I would like to clone this particular repository. Cloning the repository is nothing but a remote Git where the source code is present for this particular exercise will be saved into your local computer, as well as your local computer repository will be connected to the remote repository. If at all any changes are there in the remote repository, you can always pull the latest changes. This is specifically for the this type of repositories, like public ones. If you're working on a project if you're working on a project in a private Git repositories, then you can also push and pull changes. I've selected the repository location onto my local machine. So let's open it. This is a code which is part of this particular exercise. So let's see what does it have. It has instructions step by step in markdown files. It also have lab files and which contains the source code for each of the exercises. Perfect. Let's move back. When the repository has been cloned, let's open VS Code. We have already done. So expand the lab files and use Azure AI Services folder. So let me do that. Lab files, use Azure AI Services folder. We mostly use C Sharp as the programming language for our development. Since this is Mac, so I might be using Python uh, for quick implementation and development, but I can also move to Visual Studio for the C Sharp development. Alright. Code for both C Sharp and Python has been provided. So let's look at that. So it contains both REST client as well as SDK client. Each of the Microsoft AI, each of the Azure AI services have both REST APIs as well as SDK libraries. So SDKs are a set of libraries that are built in using a certain programming language. In this case, it can be for C Sharp or for Python, which you can import, first install and import that into your application and use them. REST client, it's just a normal API call. You have an URI and you can call the API using a request body and get a response back in a JSON format. So this is irrespective of any programming language. You call the API from any of the programming language. Let me show you the details about these two, that is REST API as well as SDK. So it is a part of the same module. Let me go back. Here it is. See, so there are two ways using REST API. So this is your application. You call your request using a JSON request body. Some requests might not have the request body because if it is a GET, and you get a response back in a JSON. Yeah. And next one is using an SDK. So you install the libraries for certain services, certain Azure AI services, and basically those libraries also perform the REST operations, but they will not be visible to us, but behind the scene they all perform the REST operation. All right, let's continue. Now we'll be provisioning an Azure AI Services resource. Let me also show you this one as well. There are two ways where you can provision Azure AI Services resource. One is multi-service resource. So you can provision a single AI services resource that is capable of connecting to multiple Azure AI services. Name, Azure AI Language, Azure AI Vision, and Azure AI Speech, and other services as well. So it will have a single resource, single endpoint, single API key that is capable of connecting to all of these services. It will have a single set of, since it is mentioned here, it will have a single set of credentials as well as single point of billing. If you need a separate resources for each of the Azure AI services, you can provision them as well separately. Even Azure AI Language is a separate resource, Vision, Speech, Search. So even all of them are separate resources. You can provision them individually as well. And some provides free tier as well. Okay. Now, let's provision an Azure AI service resource. So you must have a valid Azure subscription. If you do not have, you can sign up for free and get $200 credit. Okay, so let's see what does it have. So it tells us you can provision individual Azure AI services resource, language vision, or you can provision a single that provide access to multiple Azure AI services through a single endpoint and key. All right, so let's move to Azure portal. So we are on the Azure portal. If you do not have an Azure account, as I said, you can sign up for free and get $200 credit. This is the home page of the Azure, similar to this. Then I'll be searching Azure AI Services, and I'll be making use of multi-service account. That means a single resource can be used to connect to multiple Azure AI services. Yeah, this one. Azure AI Services, multi-service account. So let's create that. Here I'll be selecting the subscription. If you're on the free trial, then it might be here written as free trial. And if you are on pay as you go, for the first time, it might be written as pay as you go or Azure account one. So these are some of the naming convention it has. You can always rename your subscriptions. All right, so let's create a new resource group. Resource group is a logical container where you keep all your resources into it. You can think of as a cloud folder where you can create, where you can keep and create all your resources. So let's see. This is my resource group, and just choose a location. Ideally, location should be nearer to your customers so that you have a lower latency when communicating with these services. So let's use Azure East US itself. I have just used this name. Let's use standard tier. I acknowledge. Next. Networking, for all my tutorials, I'll be using all networks so that I can access it from anywhere. This is not recommended for the production environment. You must be using virtual networks, VNet and subnets for all your resources. Identity, you can access or you can authenticate with this resource in a multiple ways. The first one is Azure AD authentication, where you as a user or a developer can authenticate with the resources using a CLI. Let's talk about local development. If you are a developer and you want to authenticate with the resource on your development environment, so first you log in to CLI or you log into the IDE itself, integrated development environment, such as Visual Studio. Either you log into Visual Studio or you log into Azure CLI using your Azure credential. Then you can authenticate with a resource. Before authentication, you must be granted the access control, basically a role, some role on that particular resource, such as reader, contributor, or let's talk about storage, data owner, So there are various roles you can assign to a particular user. This is for development. Another way, during development, you can also use API keys, which is not part of this. Another way, you can, once you deploy this application to cloud, especially on the Azure, you have two ways to authenticate with the resource. One is system assigned managed identity, and another one is user assigned managed identity. These are both service principles. Behind the scene, it's a service principle which is used to authenticate with the resource. Okay, so as of now, I'll not be using them, but these are the recommended practice. If I was creating this resource for the production environment, I most of the time I use user assigned managed identity. The reason being, I create a single user assigned managed identity and use it to authenticate with multiple resources. Okay, and system assigned, if the resource is deleted, even this particular service principle is also deleted. But for user assigned, if the resource is deleted, user assigned managed identity is not deleted automatically because it's associated with multiple resources. But system assigned is only associated with single resource. Okay, review and create. Okay, so let's go back to the tutorial. Resource group, region, unique name, pricing tier, that's all right. Go to the resource, keys and endpoint, and all right. So let's come back here. All right, our Azure AI service multi-service account is created. You can see what all services you can access with this particular resource. You have under decision multiple services. Oh no, yeah, decision, language, speech, vision. These are all the categories, but these are all the under the services. Since it is a documentation link, but yeah, these are the services you can access. Document intelligence. So yep. So as it was showing us where you can get endpoint and keys, you can click here directly, or you can go to security, okay, you can go to resource management, keys and endpoints. It always provides you two keys. One is primary, another one is secondary key. It's a recommended practice. You keep these keys securely in Azure Key Vault and regenerate them regularly. Yeah, you can use either one of the keys. So how the regeneration work? Here also it's mentioned only one key is necessary to make an API call. When regenerating the first key, you can use the second key for continued access to the service. Okay, so this is the API key, this is the location, and this is the endpoint. For some of the services, location is not required during the authentication, but for others, it is required. For example, speech service. Speech requires the location. Alright, so let's move back. We have done till here. Next is use a REST interface, and another one is use an SDK. So this particular exercise have given both the ways, using REST interface as well as SDK. So let's go ahead. Okay, let's first explore the REST interface. Azure AI Services APIs are REST based, so you can consume them by submitting a JSON request over HTTP. So let's start. So I'll go to VS Code, and they have C Sharp as well as Python. Let's go there and see what else they have. So it's a console application under C Sharp, and they do have app settings.json where it requires endpoint as well as the API key. So let me put it there. Let me go to Azure portal, get the API key and put it here, and also go to and also get the endpoint. Okay, so moving back to program.cs file. So what it is getting, it is creating two properties, a static variables, and initializing them, basically getting its values from the app settings.json. It is reading the file, and after that get user input. So I will be entering some text, and okay, it is calling to detect the language. So this is a action that it will be performing, detecting a language. So it is using Azure Translator resource. We do have a separate resource, Azure Translator, where you can use it to translate text, detect language, as well as list languages. So since this is a multi-service account, I can use the same resource for multiple services. In this case, in this example, they are using to detect the language. And again, it's using REST API. Let's see. It is creating the request body and initializing the HTTP client, authenticating with the service by providing the subscription key, getting the creating the endpoint URI. Basically, the endpoint that we have is getting appended with this particular string. Next, sending a post request, checking if the status is okay. If it is okay, reading the response, parsing the response, and printing on the console. Similarly, for error messages, if it is not a success request, then we are also printing on console. So this is the example that they have taken. Let's run it. And how we can run it? Do we have documentation to run it? Yes, we do have. Right click on the REST client folder or select open in integrated terminal and run the following command. Okay, let's see. Open in integrated terminal. Oh, perfect. I did not know this. I was always using CLI to navigate to the respective folder, but right click and moving there. Perfect. Let's see. .NET run. Okay. Enter some text. Quit to stop. Okay. Hi. Let me move this up so that you can see the whole response. This was my request body that our code generated for sending the request to the API, and this is the response. Detected language, name English, what is the ISO name, EN, confidence score. In most of the Azure model or AI services, we have this property called as confidence score. It tells us the how accurate, or you can say how good is the response. Since it will be always 0 to 1, multiplied by 100 if you want to see in percentage. Let's add some more text. Um Hola. Let's see. So it's Spanish. ES is the ISO name. आप कैसे हैं? This became आप कैसे हैं? No. आप कैसे हैं? I'm just saying in Hindi, how are you? So here you can see Hindi, HI, and confidence score is 100%. So this is pretty cool example that they have given for detecting the language. But I believe they should have given more. Anyway, we'll be exploring it, this particular resource, connecting it to most of the AI services. Now let's move to Python REST client, open an integrated terminal, and also let's see the code we have in Python. Importing the HTTP client, loading the environment file that is .env. Let me keep the values over there. First is the key and second is endpoint. All right, and let's see what else it has. So initializing the properties from the environment file, taking the user input, getting the language, preparing the JSON body, printing it on console, the request body, generating the URI, sending the post request. I think yeah, this is the place it sends it, and reading the response if it is 200, and getting those properties on the console. Let's see, let's run this. Yeah, in my case it is Python 3 REST client. What is the issue? No module name .env, but I just installed it. Okay, I guess the name might be changed. Pip install .env. Next. What is error? Subprocess exited with error. Pip subprocess to backend dependency not successful. So issue with this package itself, it says. Might be old code. Um, let's upgrade pip and see if it resolves the issue. And let's try to install .env again. Nope. Oh, got it. I have to create an environment. Um, yes, I might need an environment. So for to do that, I am going to open command palette, create environment.env. I'll use 3.12. Okay, and now let's try to install again. Let me open a new terminal. Right click, open an integrated terminal, pip install .env. Something is with regard to this package itself. Anyway, uh, I'm not a Python expert, so I'll keep it as is. But you got an idea what it does. And yeah, let's move to second one. Use an SDK. You can write code that consume Azure AI services directly or use SDKs. Perfect. Let's try that. For using the SDKs, we have to install certain packages. In our case, we'll be installing Azure AI Text Analytics. This is a library that is used for the language resource. Sorry, this is the library that is used for language translation, language detection, and other language related operations. So as of now, I'll be only focusing on C Sharp. So let's move back. And this time I'll open SDK client, open program.cs. This is the initial operation that's similar, and this is the place. So first we have to install this particular package, and after that there are certain steps that you must follow as a developer. And if you are working on the Azure platform, then it is applicable to all the services that you connect to. If you are using SDKs, first you authenticate with the SDK. How you can authenticate, I have already mentioned. There are multiple ways. In our case, in this particular code, they are authenticating using API key. So Azure key credential. Let's suppose you're using CLI authentication. There's a library, so or you can say class file, Azure CLI credential. I'm not sure. Yeah. Basically in Visual Studio it comes directly, but here it's fine. But there, yeah, Azure CLI credential, Azure managed identity credential, Azure default credential. Default is it will pick up anything, and based on the priority, either Visual Studio authentication, CLI authentication, or there are a few of them which is which is picked up based on the priority. Okay. You can also use this API key using Azure default credential as well and provide the API key or connection string. In this case, it is Azure key credential. We pass on the API key, then we use the URI or create a client. So next step is first is authentication, second step is creating the client, and then third step performing the action using that client. In this case, our client is Text Analytics client. Okay. All right. Let's continue and let me open integrated environment. Let's install this .NET package. Perfect. And then, oh, before that, we need to pass on these credentials. Let me copy paste this whole thing. Perfect. Going back to program.cs. Next is .NET Run. The good part about SDK is less code, and you don't have to pass the JSON. That's a good part. So in here we have already have methods, class files, properties. You can easily extract using from this SDKs. Let's start. Let me say hi. Language English. Hola. आप कैसे हैं? Perfect. So it works. So till here we have completed. If it is only for learning purpose, it's a good practice. You clean up the resources, otherwise you'll be getting billed for that. All right. So how you can clean up resources? I'll go back to my resource group. And I can delete it from here. Either I can delete the whole resource group itself. If you're completely for development and learning purpose, if it's completely for learning purpose, I'll prefer deleting the whole resource group itself. Perfect. That's all on this session. We have completed this particular exercise. Well, there are various other lab files available. We might be using them in future, but yes, for now we are good, and see you in the next session. Thanks everyone.